Hey everyone, how's it going? So I don't think it's much of a secret that Kadabra is my favorite Pokemon, and that I do solo challenges a lot. And you definitely wouldn't think Kadabra, or even its pre-evolved form Abra, would make for a very interesting challenge. Now, I already have one in Red and Blue that I did part of my Red and Blue solo series, but this is something else. Because in that video, once we got Psychic, the run became easy. But in this video, we're not going to be using any special attacking moves. And just in case anyone was wondering, in Pokemon, attacks are divided into two categories, physical and special, and in these games, it's based on the move's type. All you need to know is that physical moves are dependent on your attack stat, special moves are dependent on your special stat. So looking at Abra's stats, that massive special, not going to be used, at least not for offensive purposes. In Generation 1, special is both offensive and defensive, but that puny base 20 attack, that is what we're going to have to use to try and get through the entirety of Pokemon Yellow, a much harder game than Red and Blue, to be honest. All the other standard rules apply, no items in battle, other Pokemon are allowed for HMs, and no glitching or cheating. Obviously, other than the fact that I modified the game so that I could get Abra as my starter, which was a lot more difficult, I'll have you know, than Red and Blue, which is why I haven't actually done a solo run on Yellow yet. And what a perfect Pokemon to start with than a Pokemon that cannot attack. Because Abra cannot learn any moves other than the ones it learns via TM. And, fun fact, you cannot get past Pewter City until you defeat Brock, and there are no TMs until you defeat Brock, so we're not going to have any attacking moves. That's fun. All is not lost, however, because when you run out of power points for your move, in this case Teleport, which only has 20 power points, thank goodness, we can then use Struggle, a 50 base power normal move in Generation 1, and when combined with Abra's exceptional attacking stat, you can just imagine how easy this part of the game is. And for those of you who've seen Red and Blue, you know exactly what's about to happen. But there are some things that are better here. There are a few extra trainers, which is good for experience points. And there is a little bit more variety in Viridian Forest, which is nice for leveling up. But we're still spending 11 hours here. Like, there's no two ways about it. Because Brock is a rock gym leader. And Struggle is a normal move in Generation 1. I know in later games it's typeless, but in Generation 1 it's a normal move. And Brock is also a little bit different this time around. On the plus side, his Pokemon are each 2 levels lower. On the massive minus side, his Geodude doesn't know Defense Curl anymore. Now, Defense Curl sometimes can help you and sometimes is really bad. Here's a case where it's really bad, because while we will eventually be doing decent damage, the fact that Geodude can attack every single turn, or has to attack every single turn, unless it gets unlucky with that 5% chance to miss, means we're just going to hemorrhage HP. And if there's one stat that is worse than Abra's attack, it's Abra's defense. I mean, funny enough, if you don't count their specials, Abra is actually worse than Magikarp. I'm not kidding. And since none of Brock's Pokemon use any special moves, I am being completely serious in that Abra is substantially worse to use versus Brock than Magikarp. I never thought I would ever be able to say Magikarp was better than any Pokemon, let alone one of my favorites, but it's true. If you remember my Magikarp video from a few years ago, you'll remember that I needed to be about level 18 or so when I defeated Brock. Well, try level 26, requiring 12 hours and 49 in-game minutes of defeating such amazing Pokemon as Metapod and Pidgey. And it takes forever, because while you do have money for potions initially, the money runs out, you gotta go back to the Pokemon Center, find 20 more Pokemon, use your teleports. It is one of the most tedious things. Thankfully, I watched some Summoning Salt videos and just try to get through it. And what's so special about level 26? Well, obviously it depends on your Abra stats, but my Abra at level 26, the Geodude was now doing 4 damage per tackle instead of 5, which makes a pretty big difference. However, that alone does not guarantee victory, not close. You're gonna need luck, including misses from Geodude and critical hits. Thankfully, because critical hits are calculated based on your speed, Abra has around an 18% chance to get a critical hit, which isn't too bad. But Geodude isn't the problem. Onix is so much worse, so you're gonna need a lot of HP when you face Onix, and how much HP you're gonna have is totally based on luck. How many critical hits, how many misses, whether you get as low as like 20 or as high as 35, they're all possible. In the successful battle, I ended up with 27 HP going into the Onix section. Onix has Tackle, Bide, and Screech, just like in Red and Blue, but it now also has Bind, which is awful and you don't want any of them. Screech misses, that's what you want. Tackle does 4 HP, Bide, you have no way of avoiding taking back damage, and it deals about 8-ish damage depending on how many critical hits you get. Honestly, because of the situation, there's just no strategy here. You only have struggle and leveling up. Those are your options, and then you just kind of have to get lucky. Bide can also last 2 or 3 turns. Because it lasted 3 turns, I was able to knock out the Onix. I did not think it would happen. And after nearly 13 hours, I've made it past Brock. That is longer than Red and Blue. And I'm not sure if I said it in that video, but I said in real life, I will never do this again. And here I am doing it again. But if you think we're out of the woods like we were in that run, you could not be farther from the truth. Yes, it will get easier temporarily. We are at a pretty high level, and we do have to defeat a few trainers, but we're going to have money for potions. So thankfully, I did not need to ever go back to the Pokemon Center and use Teleport 20 more times. That was nice. And once we get to Mount Moon, we can get the TM for Mega Punch, and thus we never have to use Struggle another time in the rest of this run. I also want to point out that Yellow seems like it's very similar to Red and Blue to the casual player, but when you're doing a challenge, the fact that the rivals and the gym leaders, the most difficult trainers, and the Elite Four of course, have totally different teams, make this a very different run. And rival number 2 is a very good example of that. We get Spearow instead of Pidgeotto, and that's actually a lot easier because Spearow has worse stats and it doesn't have Sand Attack, which would be very annoying. I don't know if Mega Punch would have been a one-hit KO, but I got a critical hit, so it was. Now Sandshrew comes out, and it does no Sand Attack, and has great defense, so that's amazing. I get another critical hit, which is nice, but of course Sandshrew uses Sand Attack, which is just fantastic. Mega Punch does hit, and it already has 85% accuracy to start with, so this is going to be fun. But we do get to the Rattata. It gets a critical hit with Quick Attack. I miss with Mega Punch, but it doesn't use Quick Attack the second turn, and I don't miss with Mega Punch. So now all that's left is Eevee, which has 3 status moves, including Sand Attack, and 1 attacking move. Let's hope not to see Tackle its only attacking move. Well, after missing with my first Mega Punch, I get Tail Whip and then not 1, not 2, but 3 tackles, including a critical hit. Thankfully, I'm finally able to land a second Mega Punch, and while it was very close, I was able to defeat rival number 2. And after battling some more trainers, I figured it was time to battle Misty. Now, she is legitimately one of the only gym leaders that isn't that bad, because her best moves are special moves, and my special is super high. Now, Misty is the only gym leader that has the exact same team. The only difference is Starmie knows Harden. But for Staryu, I hit with Mega Punch, she uses an X Defend, and then I get a critical hit. I think it would have been a 2-hit KO regardless, but I'm not complaining. Speaking of Harden, I get a critical hit with Mega Punch, Starmie uses 1 Bubble Beam, and then Misty just wants to pad its defense. Unfortunately, a great defense is not a good offense in this case, and I'm able to knock it out. So that's nice, but what's even nicer is that while Abra does not know Dig in Generation 1, which would have been great, it can learn Body Slam. And after just a few more trainer fights, we can go to the SSN and get Body Slam, which is a little bit more powerful than Mega Punch, but it also has a 30% chance of paralyzing, and it doesn't miss, except for the 1 in 256 chance. Thank you, Generation 1, for being great. But with our new Body Slam move, I think I'm ready to battle rival number 3. Now, once again, I don't know if it would have been a one-hit KO otherwise, but I get a critical hit, and I'm not going to complain once again. This time, Rattata comes out second, I get a critical hit and no quick attack. Again, not going to complain, but it's worth noting, like I said earlier, Abra does have a much better chance for critical hits than it would under modern Pokemon mechanics. With Body Slam, Sand Attack is still annoying, but not that bad. I get Slash. If that was a critical hit, it would have been bad, but it's not. Takes a few Body Slams to knock it out. The rival also uses a potion during this section, but only a Slash and a Scratch in terms of attacking moves, and I'm able to knock out the Sandshrew at pretty decent health going into the Eevee, which still only has a single attacking move. And after yet another critical hit, Eevee uses Tail Whip, and I'm easily able to knock it out with the next Body Slam, and that's rival number 3. And that is the end of the easy part of the game. I hope you enjoyed those battles, because from here on in, every single major battle is an absolute struggle, which is not a pun because thank goodness I don't have to actually use struggle anymore. But just to illustrate that, shortly after I departed the SSN, I tried to battle Lieutenant Surge. He only has one Pokemon, a Raichu, but it's 4 levels higher and now knows Mega Punch and Mega Kick, which are not very good for Abra with its base 15 defense. Case in point, you can see now that when I face a fully evolved Pokemon, Body Slam isn't looking like such a great attack anymore, and both Thunderbolt and Mega Punch do significant damage. After losing twice, it was clear this just wasn't going to happen right now. So let's skip Lieutenant Surge, and I'm actually going to backtrack to Cerulean, but more specifically to Route 25. There's a TM there, TM18, Seismic Toss. I usually skip it because there's a hiker, and I didn't want to battle a hiker with Abra, especially with Mega Punch. And the only way to get the junior trainer to move out of the way so that you can get it without cut is to battle the hiker first. But once you have cut, you can simply cut down the tree and get Seismic Toss. Now, Seismic Toss is very simple. It deals damage equal to my level. It also is the only reason this run is even possible, because other than Psychic and Psywave, which you wouldn't have access to, or Mimic, which you wouldn't have access to, Abra only can learn normal and fighting attacking moves. And you know what those have in common? They don't hit Ghost Pokemon. And you have to battle Ghost Pokemon. Even if you use the Pokédoll Skip, which I never use, there are still channelers in the Pokemon Tower that are mandatory. Until you beat them, calm Ghost Marowak, and in this case defeat Team Rocket, you are not able to get into Sylph Company and thus are not able to get Mimic. And you're not able to get into Sabrina's gym and thus not able to get Psywave, even though technically that's a special move so I couldn't use it. But due to the way Generation 1 is programmed, a set damage move, like Seismic Toss, ignores type immunities. In later game, it would just ignore resistances, so it wouldn't do less damage to a rock Pokemon, but in this case, it will affect Ghost Pokemon, and yeah, that is what makes this run possible. So, good for Seismic Toss. It's also kind of a useful move because my attack stat is pretty low, so when you're over-leveled, Seismic Toss deals a bit more damage, and it's very consistent. You know exactly how much damage you're going to deal, which is nice to make strategy. So I'm going to use it a whole bunch, and eventually I'm going to get to Celadon City. Now, in a regular Abra run, here's where the run would become a joke. You get Psychic, and nothing would be able to stand in your way, pretty much. In this run, we pretty much have the attacking moves that are best. I mean, there's Submission, which I'll use, but Abra does not have a very well-varied move pool. And I had a lot of trouble beating any of the major sections, but I did have success against Lieutenant Surge since I'm at a higher level. I used Seismic Toss, but it wasn't a 2-hit KO. Thunderbolt was still doing pretty decent damage, but Mega Punch missed, and it makes the win look a little more lopsided than it otherwise should have been. But that's badge number 3, and I will be stuck at 3 badges for quite a while. Now, I was having issues with Giovanni, but that was just because I'd run out of potions, and at half health, I wasn't able to defeat him. Unsurprising considering I'm an Abra using no psychic moves, So I had to exit the Rocket Game Corner, and I decided rather than going back to battle Giovanni, since there's no guarantee that I'd be able to beat him at my current level even with full HP, I decided to try my luck at Celadon Gym. And before I was even able to battle Erika, I was having significant issues battling just the trainers in her gym. And if the trainers were giving me a tough time, Erika was going to give me a much tougher time. So I figured it might not be the worst idea to level up a little bit and come back to Celadon a little bit later. And so I made the decision, even though I don't have the Sylph Scope, to head to Lavender Tower and to at least battle rival number 4 and some of the channelers, both to see if I could win and to gain some useful experience points. Now, Spearow has evolved into Fearow, and here's a really good illustration of how much better Seismic Toss is than Body Slam. Body Slam is doing about a third, Seismic Toss does about a half. So if I'd used Seismic Toss twice, Fearow would not have been able to use Mirror Move and hit me with a Seismic Toss, which did, well, 25 damage. After I knock out the Fearow, Vulpix is just a 2-hit KO with Body Slam. And if you're wondering why not just use Seismic Toss, well, look at Magnemite. I use Body Slam and it's a 1-hit KO because I get a critical hit. You can't get a critical hit with Seismic Toss. So if it's a 2-hit KO either way, best to go with Body Slam for the chance of paralysis or a critical hit. Sandshrew, however, has great defense. I go for Seismic Toss, it gets a critical hit slash, and then I use another Seismic Toss, and we have just one more Pokemon left, the Eevee. I decide to be safe and go for Seismic Toss. It uses Growl, and that doesn't affect Seismic Toss, so I've beaten rival number 4. Wouldn't say it was easy, but it was a first try victory, so not overly challenging. And because I have Seismic Toss, I can make my way through Pokemon Tower, obviously until I'd get to Ghost Marowak because I don't have the Sylph Scope yet. So once I get to that point, probably best to backtrack to Celadon and see if Giovanni will be a little bit easier now that I'm at a higher level. And this battle is just a mess. I forgot to heal before the battle. Onix is a 2-hit KO with Seismic Toss, but it uses Bind, so I lose quite a bit of HP. Not as big a deal as Rhyhorn getting a critical hit with Horn Attack, Seismic Toss being a 3-hit KO, but Giovanni loves to use Guard Spec, so I'm at least able to battle the Persian, but any attack and I lose. Of course, Persian doesn't attack. Now, funny enough, I went for Body Slam to try and get a fluky critical hit or paralysis. In the end, I actually would have been better off just using 2 Seismic Toss, but whatever, I win. These are the type of victories where I'd reset, but honestly, I've now spent, like 15, 16 hours on this run. I think I'll just say thank you and move on to defeat the rest of Pokemon Tower and see if I can beat Erika. Well, as it turns out, I'm not really able to defeat her. Body Slam isn't doing enough damage. Reflect doesn't help, even though I can use that because she's using special moves. And Seismic Toss is only going to deal more damage as I level up. So, might as well head to Fuchsia and just see how that goes. After battling some trainers along the way, I decided to try my luck against Koga, who has an entirely different team this time. And on paper, it looks like it wouldn't be so bad. He has 3 Venonat and a Venomoth. The Venonat are all slower, and while they're all about a 3-hit KO, they only use Psychic moves, so not too bad, although they can confuse you. But Venomoth outsped, it has Leech Life, which ordinarily would be terrible, but against a Psychic type with bad defense, it's excellent. And yeah, that's just not happening right now. So I guess the only thing to do now is to head to Saffron and to go to Sylph Company. Thankfully, there are a ton of trainers in Sylph Company, all of whom use Pokemon that are at pretty low levels, at least for this point in the game. And many of them are fully evolved, so the experience points are good. And if I defeat enough of them, maybe one of these obstacles will be okay. Speaking of which, let's talk about fake rival Fivel. I have Reflect now, so I use it. I use Seismic Toss, does barely anything, and Sandslash has Slash. Critical hit pretty much every time. I think it is an automatic critical hit, and down I go. So yeah, that's not happening. But now that I'm at level 46, keep that in mind. I was at level 48 with Magikarp when I defeated Erika. I can finally have a chance against her because Seismic Toss is now a 2-hit KO against every single one of her Pokemon. They have very annoying moves like Sleep Powder and Stun Spore, at least the last 2 do. Tangela is actually her first Pokemon in this version and didn't use Mega Drain, which is nice. Weepinbell opted to go for Acid, which did significant damage, but didn't use Sleep Powder or Stun Spore. and then Gloom missed with Sleep Powder, so I was able to knock it out, and finally we have our 4th gym badge. That took a very, very long time. And now that that domino has fallen, which will be the next? I tried battling Not Rival Fivel again, and while I would make it pretty far, I still wasn't able to get past his Vaporeon, and now's a good time to talk about why he has a Vaporeon. That was actually a mistake, although I like it because Vaporeon is honestly the worst evolution from my perspective. Now, what Eevee evolves into is based on whether you win or lose various rival battles. So there's the initial battle in Oak's Lab, which I obviously lost because I used Teleport. And then there's the battle on Route 22. Now, I meant to battle him on Route 22 and forgot. Obviously, it would have been great to gain some experience points. Maybe it could have saved me about 10 minutes, I don't know. Anyway, because it basically counts that as a loss, we have what would be the best starter for Pikachu and the worst starter for Abra, Vaporeon. For Pikachu, it's obvious why it's the best. For Abra, it's the worst because it has tons of HP, which is bad since Seismic Toss is a move we're using a lot, and it's going to take far more Seismic Tosses to knock out Vaporeon, which, trust me, will never stop being annoying. However, since I like to make sure the rival has the strongest starter for what I pick, it's thematically consistent, albeit unintentionally so. However, as you're seeing, I was not able to get past him at my current level, so I leveled up a little bit more, and at level 52, it was starting to become more consistent. I would set up Reflect against Sandslash because it's very useful unless it uses Slash, which I really don't want. It's a 1 in 4 chance, it just attacks randomly. It used Poison Sting and Swift. Seismic Toss was a 3-hit KO, but thankfully the rival uses Potions, and so it didn't attack the 3rd turn. That's pretty great. Magneton can be really trolly with Supersonic or a Paralysis. It did use Thundershock, but it didn't paralyze me. Seismic Toss was a 2-hit KO. Now we're on to Ninetales, which would be a 3-hit KO with Seismic Toss. It goes for Tail Whip not once but twice. This raises my attack due to a bizarre way that Generation 1 calculates badge boosts, which I've discussed in more detail in my previous videos, but you don't really need to know much about it for this run because it made no real difference, and it was still a 3-hit KO regardless. It may have allowed Kadabra to be a 1-hit KO, but I got a critical hit, so it was a 1-hit KO anyway, and I thought Body Slam may have been doing more damage than Seismic Toss, but I was probably wrong. Vaporeon was a 4-hit KO, but thank goodness, well, it was close. I was at 35 HP, the rival uses another useless potion, and I knock it out, and finally, another difficult trainer defeated at level 52. The level I was pretty much at when I wanted to challenge the Elite Four with the regular Abra that can actually use Psychic. However, if we can count on one trainer to not be too difficult, it's Giovanni. I literally could not have played this battle any worse, and I even got paralyzed by the Nidoqueen eventually, and I still won. I mean, at 13 HP and paralyzed, but doesn't matter, I can just go to the Pokemon Center, and now that Giovanni's defeated, I can challenge Sabrina if I want to, or get Mimic. And here's where we need to talk about Mimic, because there was a decision I had to make. What does no special moves mean? Does it mean not teaching it moves like Psychic? Or does it mean not even using Mimic to mimic a special move, which would be using a special move? Or wouldn't it? I don't know. At first, I'm like, well, it's not really a special move, so let's go defeat Koga, and it was super easy. But then I thought about it, and I was like, you know what? It just doesn't feel like in the spirit of the challenge. It's only a Generation 1 problem, since it's the only time Mimic is a TM, but I decided to make the decision that we will not be mimicking special moves. We can still use Mimic, we can mimic a status move or a physical move, but no special moves means no special moves. Even Mimic special moves. So I reset my game, and of course I forgot to save, so I had to battle Giovanni again, and as it turns out, I may have gotten a little bit lucky in the first battle, because this time, using similar tactics, I'm only at 1 HP. So maybe, just maybe, I should start giving Giovanni a little more credit. I mean, I'm not doing a play-by-play of his battle, but you know, I'll just give him mild props for making it slightly more than automatic. Speaking of not automatic, I wasn't defeating Koga. At least, I wasn't, because I ignored a very obvious strategy that I should have been using, and I will use, but before I did that, I went to battle the trainers in Sabrina's gym, and obviously Sabrina. She only has 3 Pokemon, an Abra, a Kadabra, and an Alakazam, and realistically the only one I'm actually worried about is the Alakazam. As it turns out, none of them I would need to worry about because I got really good luck, but I think I would have won either way. Body Slam was a 1-hit KO on the Abra, it was a 1-hit KO on the Kadabra, but only because I got a critical hit. The Alakazam decides to go for Recover, okay, then gets paralyzed, then can't attack because it's paralyzed, and then I win. Without taking any damage. Practicing for my Abra no damage run. That is a joke. I am never going to do that. Trust me. This run gets plenty difficult without an absurd extra condition. But now that I've beaten Sabrina, I finally come to my senses and realize, oh yeah, there is a much better way to defeat Koga. I do need to have beaten Giovanni first, because it involves Mimic, and let's just show you the strategy. Turn 1, Mimic Sleep Powder. If Venonat uses Toxic and it hits, reset because you're going to lose. Make sure Venonat stays asleep because we don't want to be hit with Toxic, and go for Body Slam. Seismic Toss is still a 3-hit KO, and Body Slam has a chance to critical hit. Repeat for Venonats 2 and 3, and don't misclick, which would be nice. For Venonat 3, I even get the critical hit I wanted, which is nice because Sleep Powder does miss 25% of the time. Thankfully, luck was on my side against Venomoth. I get the first turn Sleep Powder, I get the critical hit Body Slam. It's still a 3-hit KO, so didn't really matter at the end of the day. It would have been a 3-hit KO anyway with Seismic Toss, but it stayed asleep, and that's important, and we win. Oh my goodness, I never thought Koga with 3 Venonat and a Venomoth would be a challenging gym leader, but I also never thought I would do an Abra run without using the move Abra uses. So this has been a real learning experience, I guess, is the takeaway here. But now we get to battle Blaine, and Blaine is typically easy, right? I mean, you get to set up against the Growlithe and the Ponyta, which don't exist because Yellow version. No, this time around, we get a Ninetales, a Rapidash, and an Arcanine, all of whom have pretty good attacks, have pretty good stats, and I wasn't able to win. I was still using Mimic. The strategy was to use Confuse Ray because I didn't know what else to do, and it just simply wasn't working. I was already relying on luck. I had lost to Blaine, I believe it was 9 consecutive times. And while I don't like to level up past my problems, at some point you gotta recognize, no, it's just simply not practical to beat a trainer at your current level. Go level up. So I did. I leveled up to level 60 by battling some of the trainers that I'd previously skipped, and now that I'm at level 60, let's see how the battle is going to go. I start off by mimicking Confuse Ray, since I'm gonna need that to help me win. Ninetales goes for Quick Attack, which doesn't do too much damage, so probably best case scenario. That wouldn't be the case because after I go for Reflect, it uses Confuse Ray, and of course, on the next turn, I hit myself in Confusion. Reflect actually does nothing, by the way, in terms of confusion damage. Thankfully, Ninetales goes for Confuse Ray again, so that was great. I then am able to use my Confuse Ray on the Ninetales, and it goes for Confuse Ray again. Great job, Blaine. Excellent battling. I then go for Body Slam since it's a 3-hit KO anyway, and I wanted the Paralysis or Crit, and I got the Paralysis. There is now a significant chance Ninetales isn't able to attack. It doesn't. And I'm able to knock out the Ninetales while being at pretty decent health for the Rapidash. Now, Rapidash is a 3-hit KO at my current level unless it hits itself in Confusion, so I use Confuse Ray, it uses Growl. Best case scenario. I then use Seismic Toss, it hits itself in Confusion, meaning next turn I'm able to use Seismic Toss, and down goes Rapidash, but our Arcanine has Fire Blast and Takedown. It is not to be trifled with. I get off Confuse Ray, but it still manages to hit me with Takedown, and even with Reflect, that's 30 damage. That's a lot. I go for Seismic Toss, but once again, our Arcanine does not hit itself in Confusion, and uses Flamethrower, so now I'm at 6 HP. This isn't looking good. I need it to hit itself in Confusion. It doesn't, but it misses with Fire Blast, and yep. And you might say I got a little bit lucky, but I really didn't. the chance that Arcanine wouldn't hit itself in confusion 3 times in a row is only 12.5%. So my luck was kinda average, and I won. I'm okay with that. I don't think this was, insanely good luck by any means. I mean, if you've been watching this channel, there have been some insanely good luck battles. But now we only have one battle left. The battle against Giovanni. And like Blaine, I hoped he wouldn't be too difficult. He was difficult. And he's difficult because pretty much every Pokemon can be really annoying. Mr. Dugtrio is fast, so it gets a lot of critical hits. Persian knows Slash, which is a 100% chance of critical hit. Plus, it has a pretty good chance of all its other moves getting a critical hit. Nidoking and Nidoqueen have good defense and no Earthquake, even with Reflect. They do significant damage. And Rhyhorn has great defense and knows Earthquake and Rock Slide. Giovanni is way better in yellow than in red and blue. And after battling again and again, I would frequently make it to Nidoking or Nidoqueen, and then I would lose. And by the way, you can see what my strategy is going to be, but I'll explain it in some more detail when we talk about the successful battle. But just like with Blaine, I decided to level up a couple more levels. There were some more trainers I hadn't beaten. Actually, there were a lot of them I'd skipped. And now it was time to backtrack, come back at level 64, and let's talk about Giovanni. Now, unlike what you've seen before, I don't use Mimic on Dugtrio. It's going to be a 2-hit KO regardless, and I get a critical hit and paralysis, plus it didn't move. Very, very unlikely, and exactly why, if it's 50-50, just go for Body Slam. Now, against Persian, I misclicked. You're supposed to use Seismic Toss, because Body Slam plus Seismic Toss is not a 2-hit KO, unless you get a critical hit, which I did. That was a misclick. Sometimes I'm thinking ahead, and Persian missed with Fury Swipes. So the luck is definitely looking really good right now. Now, Nidoqueen is where I decide to set up Reflect, because it likes to use Thunder, which doesn't do too much damage to me. Then I'm able to mimic Earthquake, and Nidoqueen uses Thunder, which misses. After setting up a guard spec, we trade Earthquakes, and I'm at 80 HP, not terrible, and it's a 2-hit KO, which I was worried about, so that was pretty good. Now, Nidoking also knows Thunder. It's a 2-hit KO with Earthquake. Hoped for the crit, didn't get it, but it decided to use Thunder, missed, very good. Now we move on to Rhydon. I could really use a critical hit here, because Rhydon has really good attack. Well, I don't get one, but I do get a Fury attack that misses, and a Horn Drill, which cannot damage me because I am faster, and we have defeated all 8 gyms with just an Abra, no special moves, at level 64. But now's not the time to feel good about what I've accomplished, because I've accomplished nothing. We've beaten the gym leaders, sure, but we have 6 more mandatory battles, and they're all extremely, extremely difficult, including 2 against the rival, whom I could barely beat the last time, and his team is even better. So, what am I going to do? Well, the answer is, I'm not going to do very well. I battled him, I think, like 12 times, and it wasn't working. The biggest issue was I was being status, and none of the statuses really work well. Sandslash can use Slash, which deals tons of damage, or Poison Sting, and the battle lasts a long time, so the poison damage really starts to add up, even though it only takes away 1/16 of your HP, as opposed to 1/8. In addition, Execute likes to use Stun Spore, and because I'm relying on Seismic Toss, I'm not getting any one-hit KOs that can avoid potentially being damaged by these moves. And just when I think I'm out of the woods, Magneton knows Thunder Wave. And while it doesn't have a good moveset, we still have to face Ninetales and Vaporeon, the latter of which now knows Hydro Pump. So, what am I gonna do? I'm almost out of trainers that I can battle, and I'm not really even close. Well, there is another way to gain levels. Throughout the game, I pick up rare candies, and there actually are a ton of them hidden throughout Kanto. I had 9 of them. And if you're gonna use one rare candy, might as well use them all, right? So I did. And guess what? The next battle, I lost. Because the statuses are still a big deal. And I was so annoyed, but I figured I got some bad luck. So let's try again and I'll use the rare candies, and I'll try to modify my strategy a bit, even though you haven't seen the previous battle. So for Sand Slash, I use Seismic Toss immediately, because I really don't want it to use Slash. Let's just give it one turn to attack me. Goes for Swift, fine. I use a second Seismic Toss, and it knocks it out. Thank you, rare candies. Execute is still going to be a 2-hit KO, but it goes for Solar Beam, which is only a 1 in 4 chance. Leech Seed, Poison Powder, Stun Spore are all awful. I forgot to even mention how annoying Leech Seed can be. It's pretty much why I lost the previous battle, but best case scenario happens, so far looking good. That is until Magneton uses Thunder Wave, and now I'm paralyzed, so I get to attack second, potentially not attack due to paralysis. Yippee! The Thunder Shock isn't a big deal, wish I would have done that last turn, and I am able to attack, so we're halfway done. And now I get really annoyed because I get a critical hit against me with Ember, Seismic Toss hits, and then I get not 1, but 2 turns where I'm immobilized. Thankfully the Ninetales isn't attacking, and it's the only Pokemon left that actually uses physical attacks, so this isn't such a big deal. In fact, it actually helps, because these stat modifications are causing my attack to get increased. I get hit with Psychic, that lowers my special, and that is why Kadabra is now a 1-hit KO with Body Slam, as opposed to a 2-hit KO, although I really don't like that my special was lowered, because now Hydro Pump is going to be, well, terrible. I'm just going to use Seismic Toss to be safe. Turn 1 goes for Mist, Seismic Toss does about a third. Turn 2, however, Hydro Pump hits, and I'm paralyzed. Beautiful. But then Vaporeon gets super concerned I'm going to lower its stats, so it uses Mist, and I win. Yeah, I don't know what to say about that one. I got a little bit of bad luck, but overall, more good luck. But the Elite Four, I'm not going to be able to rely on luck like this. Because as you guys know, those of you who are new, you're going to find this out. We do not save between Elite Four members. Because these types of quote-unquote strategies, they're fun for videos, they're cool to narrate, but they're not champion-level strategies. In Pokemon Stadium and Stadium 2, you can't save between Elite Four members, and I was really bad at those games as a kid. And it's those failures at those games which made me want to be better at Pokemon. And I'll have you know, I still haven't defeated them. But I think I'm slightly better at Pokemon, so that's kind of nice. But the truth is, right now, I'm kind of delaying. Because the Elite Four, and while it's not the worst experience I've ever had, it's one of the worst. Definitely top 5, probably top 3. That means it's in the same sort of category as stuff like Feebas and Magikarp. Case in point, see how my Abra is at level 74? Yeah. I'm not going to be able to win until I'm at least 20 levels higher. I won't. It doesn't work. And not a single member of the Elite Four is free. Not even Bruno. You know the challenge is tough when not even Bruno is free. I mean, don't get me wrong. He's still the easiest member by far, but he's not free. I lost to Bruno. And I think that's enough hype for now. Let's talk about each Elite Four battle and how they went, and also how they used to go before I leveled up this much. So let's start off with Lorelei. You'll notice that my moveset hasn't changed. I tried other moves, none of them really helped. The strategy with Lorelei in the beginning is simple. Use Seismic Toss, it's a 2-hit KO on both Dugong and Cloyster. At lower levels, Dugong was a 3-hit KO, which wasn't too big a deal. Neither Dugong nor Cloyster were really very problematic. The worst thing Dugong could do is use Rest and waste your time. But Cloyster could use Ice Beam and freeze you. It never happened. In this battle, it used Clamp, but these two are not usually the problem. Now, Slowbro used to be a problem before I changed strategies. My earlier strategy was to mimic Amnesia for defensive purposes and to use the Badge Boost glitch, but obviously you can see I'm using Seismic Toss, so I'm not doing that anymore. And I needed the Slowbro to cooperate and not get critical hits. Doesn't have a big chance of that, but it still happened. I figured out a better strategy, so just use 2 Seismic Tosses. Also, I should mention, it was 3 Seismic Tosses for the longest time. And then we move on to Jinx. Now, Jinx has a move I want to use, and that move is Lovely Kiss, because both Jinx and Lapras can be unbelievably trolly, and I don't want to deal with them. So I mimic Lovely Kiss, and I'm just hoping for no Lovely Kiss or Ice Punch Freeze, I get Double Slap. Perfect. I don't care if it hits or not. I would use Lovely Kiss here, but at my current level, it's a range, but Body Slam can be a one-hit KO. It was here, and if it's not, there is still a 25% chance that Lovely Kiss misses, and you really don't want that to happen. So using Body Slam is the best strategy. Now, Lapras has annoying moves. Body Slam can paralyze, Confuse Ray can confuse on top of that, and Blizzard can freeze. Those are all bad things. So we're going to use Lovely Kiss and hopefully not miss, but it's not a big deal if we do, so long as we don't get confused or paralyzed. We don't miss on turn 1. Typically it's a 3-hit KO, but I'll always go for Body Slam, see if I get the lucky crit. I do. That just means Lapras has less turns to wake up, and I'm able to defeat Lorelei. Overall, her difficulty is medium, because there are still lots of things that can go wrong. The truth is, most of my attempts at the Elite Four were done in the low to mid 80s. And while this strategy worked, it was definitely less consistent. At level 90, it's about 90% or so chance I get past Lorelei, which isn't too bad. And Bruno, you can tell I respect him in this run at least a little bit because I'm healing. I wouldn't typically do that. The strategy is very simple. Use Reflect against Onix. The Onix everything has a way better moveset. They actually know moves they should know, but it's 2 Seismic Tosses to KO every Pokemon. Body Slam is also a 2-hit KO, but you can get critical hits. I don't in this battle, but with the Reflect up, nothing is doing much damage. The only Pokemon that was worrisome was Machamp, because it previously was a 3-hit KO, and it has Karate Chop, which will critical hit every single time, and that's how I would lose. Although I also got a Hitmonlee Mega Kick critical hit. That's another way I've lost, because critical hits ignore Reflect. This time, however, was very typical of Bruno. You pretty much don't get damaged at all, and it looks really simple. But that's the illusion behind a lot of these battles. When they go well, they look so easy, but they can go badly in a hurry. Bruno typically wasn't too bad, and neither was Agatha, which may surprise you, but her Pokemon are way less trolly. Let's just throw up her movesets for a second. The moves are way less trolly this time around, and so we can be a lot more consistent. The other thing to note is that we're going to have to use Seismic Toss against the Gengar and the Haunter, and at my current level, they're all 2-hit KOs. In the past, some of them could be 3-hit KOs. It's just such a big difference. It's why leveling up is so mandatory. You know I'm all about consistent strategies. Yeah, this is where they started getting a little consistent. However, the one trolly move you can get, which completely makes Agatha a nightmare, is Confuse Ray, and I got Confuse Ray. And because I have such low defense, hitting myself in confusion is very, very bad. But, spoiler alert, it would not happen in this entire battle. This battle was a really boring version of the Agatha battle, where pretty much nothing bad happened. I used Seismic Toss against the Haunter. It goes for Hypnosis and misses. And I guess I should mention Hypnosis is not as trolly because Dream Eater doesn't matter. I'm Psychic type. And have Great Special. I'm not really worried about that. It's more the Arbok, which is coming up using Glare, which is bad, or Confuse Ray and hitting myself in confusion like 10 times. That's how I would lose. But if I wasn't confused or paralyzed, I was good. Like in this battle, I go for Body Slam, hoping for the crit or paralysis. I don't get either. In fact, Arbok gets a critical hit with Acid. That's not a big deal, because the final Gengar, pretty much its only damaging move is Psychic, which I'm not too worried about. It does know Confuse Ray though. Thankfully, it doesn't use that, it uses Dream Eater, and this Agatha battle went very smoothly. I would say it's about an 80% chance the battle looks like this, but the ones that don't, it's very quick. Usually the first Gengar will confuse you. I actually thought I was going to lose this battle, ended up never hitting myself in confusion. Pretty unlikely, but I'll take it. Because now we get to face one of the most difficult battles I've ever done, Lance. And it is because of Lance I need to be at such a high level, because it just wasn't happening. I would beat Lance maybe 1 in every 10 tries, and considering how long it takes to do these, that wasn't good enough. Now, let's look at Lance's Pokemon. You'll notice that they all pretty much have Hyper Beam, which is bad. If they critical hit, that's very bad. There's also a high chance of being hit with Thunder Wave. That's really bad too. You also might notice that in a no special moves run, there really isn't anything useful for me to mimic. Hyper Beam's not going to be a one-hit KO, and I don't want to recharge, so I'm better off just using Seismic Toss and mixing in Body Slam for hopes of crits and paralysis. I think I must have lost to Lance like 25 times, and I hate it when it's one of the last members of the Elite Four that is one of the hardest, because it means I do this entire run, go through everything, and Lorelei and Agatha used to be a lot more luck-based at lower levels, and then I get to Lance, and I would just lose with a critical hit Hyper Beam from Gyarados. It was awful. And I still lost at this level. I think this was my 5th attempt, so I just want you to keep that in mind. At level 94, it took 5 attempts for me to finally get a battle that's worth showing. But let's talk about the battle itself. Turn 1, set up Reflect, and Gyarados went for Leer, okay? I went for Body Slam, hoping for the crit or paralysis. I get neither, and I get a second Leer. Again, due to a weird mechanic in Gen 1, this is raising my attack by now 25%. So I can actually knock out the Gyarados with Body Slam. I honestly wish Gyarados would have used a few more Leers because Dragonair is so close to being a one-hit KO with Body Slam, but I'm not complaining about it being paralyzed and not attacking. Thunder Wave is so bad. Thankfully, I'm not going to have to worry about that because I knock it out on the next turn, and the next Dragonair does not know Thunder Wave. Turn 1, I go for Body Slam, almost a one-hit KO, but Lance uses the retroactive Hyper Potion. That's fine, go for Body Slam again, he uses Bubble Beam, don't get the speed drop, and because of my high special and being at, level 94, it does nothing and I knock it out the next turn. But Aerodactyl can be very, very scary. It has insane base speed, meaning it gets critical hits a lot. I outspeed, which is why I mentioned that speed drop with Bubble Beam. It's a 2-hit KO with Seismic Toss. It uses Swift, which is the second best case scenario. Wing attack is best. No critical hit, which is awesome. And I knock it out the next turn. Now I just don't want a critical hit from Dragonite Hyper Beam. No critical hit Dragonite Hyper Beam. It's a 3-hit KO with Seismic Toss, so I go for Body Slam, no paralysis, and I get a Fire Blast, a Thunder. They both hit, but nothing more happens, and that is Lance. I cannot tell you how many different ways I've lost to Lance. Critical hits from every single one of the Pokemon, being paralyzed when I would have knocked out Dragonite with like 4 HP. I lost every single way you could imagine, and each time it was heartbreaking. And one of the biggest reasons was it didn't give me a lot of attempts versus the champion. I didn't really know what to expect, what sort of things the champion likes to do. And his team is a little different. That being said, we're so close, there's just one more battle. So, let's see how it goes. This time, I decide to set up Reflect against Sandslash because other Pokemon were giving me problems in my previous attempts. Goes for Poison Sting, which is good, but I get poisoned, which is not so good. Seismic Toss will be a 2-hit KO. It goes for Fury Swipes and misses, which is very good, and I knock it out the next turn. Now out comes Alakazam, which knows Kinesis, and I've lost because Alakazam used Kinesis 3 times and I couldn't land an attack right at the end of the battle. Very frustrating. And you'd think I'd want to knock it out quickly, but since I'm poisoned, I'm going to mimic Recover. I wish Abra could learn Recover another way, but Recover is just so useful. When I don't have items to heal myself, we need it. I mean, look, Alakazam clearly sees how useful it is. It goes for Recover even though it's at full health. Now, Body Slam would not be a one-hit KO otherwise, but I get a critical hit, and that's pretty big. Pretty much every move Alakazam had could be very bad for me. So, even though I'm poisoned, this is looking pretty good so far. But Exeggutor knows Leech Seed, and that with poison is very bad. It looks like Seismic Toss is going to be a 2-hit KO. It goes for Stomp, excellent, but it's not a 2-hit KO, and it goes for Leech Seed. Ugh, this is bad. But on the bright side, that is half the team down. So let's see if we can overcome these setbacks. Now I go for Body Slam, hoping for the critical hit or paralysis. It would be a 2-hit KO if it weren't for Leech Seed. Very annoying. All I want to see is not Fire Spin. Fire Spin is like Wrap. I can't attack, and every turn I'm going to lose HP from Fire Spin, Leech Seed, which is going to go straight to Ninetales, and Poison. this could be the end. Thankfully, Fire Spin does not last the maximum amount of turns and I'm able to use Recover. See? Recover, very, very useful. Ninetales then goes for Tail Whip, but it's pretty much got all its HP back, so it could easily use Fire Spin on the next turn. I go for Body Slam, I get that paralysis, and it goes for Fire Spin and misses. Yes, that's what we need. But I get greedy, go for the Recover, and it goes for Fire Spin, and it doesn't miss. That was a bad choice by me. However, it didn't end up mattering. Fire Spin only lasted 2 turns, and because of the Tail Whip that Ninetales used, Body Slam is just doing that much more damage to keep it at a 2-hit KO, and we have 2 more Pokemon remaining. Oh my god, this is stressful. Now, I get the critical hit on Magneton, and I don't have to worry about being paralyzed, which is nice. It goes for Screech. Once again, I decide to heal, trying to be a little greedy, hoping for another Screech. I get Thunderbolt and decide, okay, I just use another Body Slam. That leaves 1 Pokemon, but it has a ton of HP and Hydro Pump. I've already lost to it a bunch of times. Here comes Vaporeon. I hope for the miracle crit or paralysis doesn't happen. It goes for Hydro Pump and misses, that's good, but then it goes for Quick Attack. I don't get the paralysis, but as long as it doesn't crit, I should be fine. It does not crit, and we have finally defeated the champion with just an Abra and only physical attacking moves. Wow, I had no idea this would be so difficult. I mean, 27 hours of in-game time? I don't think I've ever... No, I know I've never gotten nearly that high before. Even when I was a kid, even when I used to play casually, typically it was like 18 to 20 hours. This was just... it was constantly difficult. And it wasn't just Abra's stats, it was the lack of variety. If I had more types of moves, or even had access to decent status moves, this wouldn't be so bad, but having to rely on Seismic Toss the entire run, it was brutal. And I can't wait to eventually try this again in every 3rd version. I mentioned this on my Twitter that it's something I'd be interested in doing, because what's more J-Rose 11 than a ridiculously, needlessly difficult Abra challenge? I mean, sure, Kadabra, but that would be, you know, too easy. But that's all for me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video where I beat the game with Magikarp and no items. I'm just kidding. Or am I? Take care, everyone.